We have the professor of professors joining us today. Professor Peter Ricci was a former hotel general manager who has more degrees than Freemasonry. He is the top hospitality professor for FAU, and he is going to teach us how to find more employees, tricks to teaching customer engagement, and what you should look for in a hospitality college program. All this and more on today's True Hotel Leaders, where leaders teach leaders. Do you want to give your housekeepers a raise but you just can't afford it? No problem. We will increase their pay for you and it will cost your hotel nothing. Stop the hiring crisis and pay your employees more money. The hiring crisis ends today at We Tip Hotels. For more information, visit wetiphotels.com. Hey, you know what time it is? It's another episode of True Hotel Leaders, and I'm your host, Bruce Jordan. We have the man, the professor, not that basketball playing professor, the real professor. We have Peter Ricci. What's going on, buddy? How you been?
Everything good. So nice to see you.
Everything really good.
I always am an optimist. So things are good. They're just weird. Very, very weird. I've never seen anything like what we're going through in hospitality in my whole life. And I'll be 56 1 month from today. And I started when I was 14. So that's a lot of years to have never seen anything like this. But it's good. It's just strange.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I know people that they've been in the hospitality industry forever, and I was talking to a front desk manager, and he was like, you know what, I'm tired of this. I think I'm just gonna go to nursing school. Like every time something happens, you know, there's mass layoffs and everything else, so I just can't do it anymore. And then you got the other people that say, this is all I know, this is all I love, I'm gonna stick it out.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you. It's very strange. I mean, you know, at FAU we had a COVID-19 certificate that went viral. We had over 80,000 people in the end. And so I've been hearing comments from people via email, U.S. postcards, voicemails, you name it, for months and months and months. And they started to give signals months ago that they were home for the first time with their family, seeing their neighbors. And the pandemic gave them a pause from these 50, 60, 70-hour work weeks that they have always done. They've never had that time to sit and stop and really think about life and what they wanted to do. And a lot of them in that time, they felt very betrayed by the companies they were working for. And I didn't notice any difference from an airline to a theme park to a restaurant to an event planner to catering. Everybody was bitter. So they were mad at COVID for coming. They were mad at COVID for coming at a time when the economy was doing great. And they were mad because for years they've been the caregivers told to support people, take care of them when they're traveling, make them feel comfortable, and here they're left high and dry without a job.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, so when you think about it from that perspective, I was getting hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of these same comments. So I had a feeling that people were going to start thinking about other things to do, but, you know, hospitality is in my blood, and it's one of those things that you'll always do. But like I said, I'm 55. I'm not about to go out and start a new career. Maybe like a 21 or 35-year-old would easily take this time and think about something else. So that's how it started. And then people started finding jobs, and they were home with their families. That many of them did not lose their jobs like we did in our industry because we were the hardest hit. So they started finding jobs, hearing about other jobs, realizing they could make more money, finding better benefits, finding better work-life balance. And then the bitterness started to turn into more of a movement of, I'm leaving hospitality. I'm not going back, I'm not looking back, and I'm happy with doing something else. And I didn't really believe it because all the years in the business, you know, you just love it and it's in your blood, but it's reality now. I've never posted so many jobs for so many employers in the 14 years I've been here. I post jobs via email from my students, my alumni, the certificate takers, and every day I would get 5, 10, 20 emails. Now I'm getting 20, 30, 50 emails, and the response is, you know, we can't find anyone, or they show up for a week and then they leave, or, you know, we're trying to pay more, but it's not enough, and it's just this perfect storm of weirdness, and yet people are starting to travel again. at the same time.
Wow. So speaking of starting when you was 14, like how did you get started? Like how did you get to where you're at today, and
Well,
where did this all come from?
like many of us in this business, we just kind of fall into it. I was in high school. I grew up in South Florida. I moved here when I was 12 from New York, and my high school had a daily announcement of jobs for teenagers. And one of the local restaurants was a place that I really loved because they had great seafood, and they were looking for a dishwasher. I didn't know what a dishwasher was, but I went and applied because I wanted a paycheck.
There you go.
And my mom thought it was funny because I didn't wash dishes home, but I would go to work and wash dishes all day. So I did that for 2 or 3 months, and they promoted me to busboy. And I'm telling you, I still remember how excited I was to get promoted. And it was a nice upscale restaurant, and I got a tip share of what the servers got. And I made great money all through high school. I was promoted to server, and then when I went to college, I did banquets and catering, and I worked for the equivalent of Airmark at my university. It's called University Dining Services, but I did special events and catering and outdoor concerts, all food and beverage related things, and it just became a part of me. I wanted to study law. I read a book. I still have it on my shelf somewhere, but I read that you could be a hospitality lawyer. And so I got accepted to law school. I did a semester and hated the reading. And I was like, I want to do hospitality, but not this. And I wound up right back at the university. I did my master's in tourism, and I've been in it ever since. I've spent a little bit of time in events, 3 or 4 years at a convention and visitors bureau, and then I managed hotels for a big chunk of time. And then I went back and did my doctorate just before I turned 40. And I've been in academia now for a while. But hospitality, no matter what angle I look at, I mean, when I was young, I interned for an airline, and I worked at a travel agency part-time. It's been my life. And even I can see now, macro level, yes, there is a lot more than just working, but I'm a workaholic because I've grown up in this business.
Same here.
I think the younger generation, they won't stand for that type of work-life balance that we took as normal. So when I read these thousands of comments, I understand, because I was home at the pandemic like the rest of us, and I never had the time to stop and think and smell the roses. And it really kind of inspired a lot of them with social justice, or, to the extent where I want to be treated the same as my other employees in other industries. And I don't know, I see both sides. I mean, as an employer, we operate on relatively small margins in hospitality. So raising an entry-level worker's salary to $40,000 or $50,000 a year is probably outlandish on the financial side, but it's probably something that needs to be done. And, I've been trying to find ways to help employers. If you have 3 line cooks and they're all averaging 18 hours of overtime because you're so slammed, why not create that 4th role and give everybody a $15 an hour, somewhere in that range increase, and see if the numbers will flow. The optimism in me fades a little bit when I think of how much prices are going to have to increase in the next year to cover these wage increases.
Yeah, you have no idea. When I was looking at the numbers and I was looking at everything, I'm seeing what's going on, and a lot of it is just, the hotels not using common sense. Instead of you have to put your part-time and your full-time position for the same position simultaneously. Like, you may have someone that wants to work, they have the skills, they have the skill set, but they don't want to work full-time.
Okay.
They may want to work 20 hours. Like, yeah, you know what, I could do this from like a 5 to 9, or I could do this from like a 7 to 11, but I'm not trying to do no 3 to 11.
I see.
You know what I mean? So a lot of them are just not using the common sense. Like, you know what? Maybe if I break this up a little bit, instead of trying to do a full 8-hour shift, I just put two 4-hour shifts together, and I can make it work.
Interesting. I did have a kind of forward-thinking general manager reach out to me from a corporate managed Hilton property, and this was before the staffing really got bad, and he was willing to even hire people 1 day a week to work with their schedules.
Yeah.
And I said, the thinking has always been if you work 1 day a week, it's going to take us a while to train you, and then you're going to forget it when you come back the next week. But once they're up to speed, that would be great if they show up every Thursday or whatever day they pick, and you can rely on that person. Why not? I mean, I think we've arbitrarily set, speaking of hotels, the 3 to 11 shift, 7 a.m. to 3 shift. That came from us. It didn't come from employees saying, I like 7 a.m. to 3 or 3 to 11. That was us arbitrarily doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really think there is a balance somewhere. I think the pandemic made a lot of hospitality workers realize that they did not have benefits, and their neighbors, friends, family, colleagues did in other industries, and that stood out a little bit. And I know from being a hotel general manager, outside of my executive committee, very few of my hourlies ever participated in the benefits programs because they were too costly.
Exactly.
And over the past decade, the costs have done nothing but rise. So we haven't been a benefits-friendly type of an industry, and we haven't been known ever for paying well at the starting point. I've always told students, you will make good money and you can have a wonderful life in hospitality once you've reached a certain level. But a lot of people today say, well, why can't I start like I could at a call center, or working in a veterinarian practice, or working at a chiropractor's front desk, or working at Aldi or Publix or Target. Why can't I do that? They're similar fields, they require similar skill sets, and they're willing to start me at a higher pay with benefits, etc. So it's kind of a soul-searching wake-up call for hospitality, but I remain optimistic. I remain exceptionally optimistic for students or young people right now, because if they're coming to a new industry for the first time, we have more jobs than we ever have before.
Yeah.
There'll be we've always been able to promote exceptional people faster in our industry than others. And I think right now, if you come in and you're a superstar, you're going to rise fast. The problem is finding the people that want to come in. And it's across every sector of our business right now that we're struggling for staff.
Absolutely. I'm looking over here at this wall, and I see all these degrees. Like, you have more degrees than Freemasonry over here. Like, you've been in college since you were 2.
I've always loved education. To me, I grew up in a family on welfare. My dad was medically disabled in his 40s, and my mom worked an hourly role for very low pay, and we lived on government assistance. And to me, education was the way to a better financial future. But I wound up falling in love with hospitality, and so my degrees are in all different areas. My bachelor's is in sociology because I thought it was a good precursor for law school. My master's is a Master of Science in Recreational Studies, which was the closest thing they had to tourism, and it was kind of natural resource tourism recreation. And then when I decided to come into academia in my 40s, I said I'd better get a doctorate in leadership and education, because that's the part I'm missing. So I did my doctorate in educational leadership. So they're all over the board, but I'm also all about certifications and lifelong learning. So I have certification in digital marketing from, I think it's from American Hotel Lodging, the Educational Institute. I apologize if it's wrong, but I have one for revenue, one for hospitality business acumen, one for this, one for that. And I try to do one every other year because I never want to feel old. I want to relate to what people are learning now if they're working the front office now. And when I go to hotels, I still want to go behind the desks and answer the switchboard and get involved. So I never want to lose that operations side of me. I would say my biggest chunk of my career that I loved was living in hotels and managing hotels. I found them to be like big houses that you lived in, where you welcome people from all over the world every day. And because there's so many families and mixtures of people, there's something always dysfunctional going on, and it's fun. So I would love to help the guest, and then there was always something going on, a broken pipe or a late flight or the van tire blew out or whatever. It's just a fun, crazy business.
Yes, it is.
So
Yes, it is.
yeah, so I don't ever want to lose that by becoming an academic and being like in an ivory tower all stodgy and crusty. Before I saw you today, I was down at the Hard Rock in Hollywood. Yesterday I was at the Harbor Beach Marriott in Fort Lauderdale. I'm constantly out with the general managers asking them questions. How can we help you? What's going on? What should we be teaching? And that kind of stuff. And I'm involved in a lot of professional organizations,
With everything that's going on, and you still got a lot of students. Are those students? Is there like a greater demand for those students, and are they still coming in saying, "Hey, I want to be a part of hospitality," or it's like
It's very strange. It's a little too new to tell. It's a little too recent. But in the summer, which was of 2020, we had a bump in enrollments because many people returned to South Florida for the pandemic to be with their families.
Okay.
In the fall of 2020 and the spring of 2021, our enrollments are down about 20 to 35%, which is disconcerting but not unexpected because a lot of people have had issues, so they've postponed college for the short run.
Gotcha.
What I'm worried about is nationally, if hospitality enrollments go down because of a change of interest and a lack of desire to work in the business.
Yeah.
That's what concerns me because we're the feeder of talent for 2023, 24, 25. And so I'm really biting at the bit to see how our fall 21 enrollments are, because by then people should start coming back to school. We'll be back primarily face-to-face if those classes were your option. We'll always have hybrid or online, but if face-to-face was your desired method of learning, those classes will be back. So I'm really can't determine until fall, but I've heard anecdotally that programs are down all over the country.
Okay.
And that scares me a little bit, but it's too soon to really be scared. Now, as far as students, out of a labor of love and because I'm not the typical academic, I do job maintenance myself for my students. And that includes those emails, blasts, career fairs, interview practice, all that stuff. And I've been bombarded. There's more jobs than ever before. So if I were a 20, 21-year-old in my program, or if I were a career-changing 40-year-old in my program, the opportunities right now are amazing. They're just amazing. And, before long, the cruise lines will be sailing in the U.S. again. They're all ready to go, and they're going to be hiring again. The theme parks are just slowly now coming back to full force. The airlines are selling the middle seats again, so everything is coming back. And there are opportunities across every sector. Hotels, which your area that you focus on, happens just to be my favorite and my passion. But I stay open-minded because transportation companies, Uber or Lyft, van services, tour operators, they're all coming back.
Yeah. I was looking when I was looking at everything, and I was seeing what's going on, and it seems like everybody's evolving except for us. For instance, your average plumber. Plumbers used to make $11-12 an hour. Now they're making $100,000 a year because it's a craft. Carpenters, they used to make,
Correct.
$12, $13, $14 an hour, and now they're making $60,000, $70,000 a year because it's a craft. I knew a guy, he made $1,500 in one day hanging sheetrock.
Wow.
So and housekeeping is a craft. It's an art. Like, not anyone could just go and do that job. People are thinking like housekeeping is, I can clean my house. Like, no, it's not the same thing.
Not every day, multiple rooms. It's an art, and you have to love it, and it has to be your passion. And any part of hospitality, whether you do accounts payable or front office or guest service, has to be what you love and what makes you get excited every day. I think my theory on what led to this talent pandemic is that in the 70s, after the gas crisis, the motor lodges and motels of that time learned how to be more efficient. Then in the 80s, when the tax laws changed and we also had recessions and corporations couldn't entertain and write off the money as much, hotels learned how to be more efficient.
Yeah.
And then came SARS and Persian Gulf War and then 9/11 and more recessions. After every bout, we became more efficient, which means we put more on the shoulders of our hourly staff in particular, and we reduced the number of staff each cycle. Mm-hmm. So in this scenario, when people were separated from their crazy work week and had time just to breathe, they really took a stand this time. And I think the industry has done it to themselves. I mean, back in time, speaking just on hotels, you could travel for free at most hotel brands, or then it went to $19 and $29. It was still a very good benefit. But you didn't really have time off to travel, but when you could, it was cheap. Slowly over time, especially the major brands like Marriott and the others, it was $69, $89, or $99 if you wanted to stay at a luxury brand. That's not a discount to me. Mm-mm. That's not rewarding me. And then I don't have benefits, and I don't have this, and I don't get free lunch, and I don't get that. We've taken so many things away. And so, to me, this is a time of exodus, and it's for the industry to learn from it. I think the thing that makes me most angry is the tiny, tiny handful of employers who are still resisting it.
Yeah.
And blaming it on unemployment insurance, which is a whopping $300 a week here in Florida. That is not going to drive mass numbers back to the hotels. They blame the employees for being lazy, wanting to take stimulus money. That's dried up. That is not driving people back. Instead, we have to soul search and say, okay, what is a fair starting salary for our market? What are reasonable benefits that we can compete with company A, B, C, and other industries in our neighborhood? And how are we going to still make profit? I mean, that's where I get a little nervous, because the answer is raise room rates, raise meal prices, raise airline tickets. I can't tell you in the past month how many people that are flying again have emailed me and said, have you seen these airfares? Have you seen what's going on? I'm not a fan of flying, so I haven't paid attention, but they're all complaining about it. And I said, supply demand, we're going to try to make up for 2020 as fast as we can in hotels, in restaurants. Remember, the restaurants were forced to be closed and then have a sparse number of tables. And, you know, with low profit margins, they have to make some money back. But now the staffing issue. So it's just this whirlwind of things.
Yeah.
And I think leaders need to get together, put their heads together in some, roundtable discussions and take action. I mean, I've reached out to a couple of CEOs and I said, whichever one of you wants to be the brand that takes change first, I'm here to promote it. If you say we're the company that's going to start workers at $30,000 and we're going to give them free health insurance and we're going to give you decent work-life balance of 40 hours a week, you're going to start getting applicants. But nobody wants to take the jump yet. They're all like, well, I don't know. Well, And the funniest thing is, a year ago, everybody was lobbying to fight the $15 wage increase.
Yeah.
That went out the window.
Yeah.
I mean, I post line cooks this week for $25 an hour.
And still.
With $1,000 sign-on bonus. That was the highest end, but still having issues at $25 an hour. So the $15 an hour thing that everybody was so in a tizzy about, that I thought was fair anyway, it just went out the window.
What's so funny? I feel like a lot of this is just the chickens coming home to roost. I remember when I had an issue at a hotel, and my issue was I couldn't leave a tip because I didn't have any cash. All I had was credit cards. So I got frustrated and I got tired. So, our company had set up, we created something called We Tip Hotels, where the guests can leave a tip with the credit card.
Nice.
So I'm like, all right, this is going to be great. I remember I talked to a couple of management companies, and they said, this is a great idea. What's in it for us?
Wow.
I'm like, what do you mean what's in it for
Yeah,
you?
nothing.
Like, you don't have to worry about, you get to pay your housekeeper what they're worth. You don't have to worry about them leaving. You get better retention. They're like, yeah, but if we don't get any money for it, we're not going to do it. I'm like, wow.
Interesting.
And now this happens.
And it's funny, because people ask me all the time, are you for the $15 minimum wage increase? I say no, because it should be market specific.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in New York, $15 minimum wage doesn't mean anything, or San Francisco. But if you're in a small town in Iowa, it might mean something. So I say a reasonable living wage based on your geography is what we need to do. I read somewhere last week, somebody had done some research. I wish I could quote it, but it was about $32,000 to $38,000 was the minimum starting salary that someone should have working in South Florida. And I felt that was reasonable. I don't know what that equates to per hour, but I think it should be market specific.
Yeah.
And one thing we haven't talked about is guests were pent up for so long, they're bitter right now. And they're not treating our service people well. And when you go to a venue that's short-staffed and tempers rise, it's made for more guest violent incidents than I've ever seen in a short time in my life. Just before we sat down to converse, I saw in the news that a Southwest Airlines flight attendant had 2 teeth knocked out. So I said, this is absurd. This is absurd. And the more those outbursts occur, the fewer people are going to want to work in our business. It all goes together.
That wouldn't happen in the hotel industry, because one thing we know how to do, if you watch The Karate Kid, the hotel industry, we know how to wax on and wax off really well. So
and we can evict them, easier than landing the plane and doing so. But it's just a strange time. But you can see I'm an optimist by nature, and I love the hospitality business. There is something about working with people and guests and doing that you can't get in a cubicle, that you can't get working in a warehouse. I'm sorry, it's just something that we do that you feel that you love. But that doesn't mean you have to be so abused in pay, benefits, etc. to take it. So I like that the voice of the worker is finally getting heard, instead of just the voice of the owner-operator. I think it's time. So, I think there needs to be a balance. We need to make profits. Like I said, I come from a fixing hotel style of business where my hotels were profitable. They led in the marketplace. The owners were happy, but I also took care of the employees to get there. Yeah. There's got to be a win-win on both sides. That's kind of where I think we'll head. I don't know how.
The good news is that people are still enrolling, so you can't have to worry about that there. You're still able to stay in business.
Absolutely.
But what are some of the things that new students should be looking for when it comes to a hospitality school?
I would do their due diligence on finding an employer that's going to care for them for the long haul, where they have opportunities. I would encourage them to see the forest for the trees. We have too many right now who are just going for the sign-on bonus, just going for the $2 an hour versus what they were making across the street, instead of the long-term health and wellness factors. And by health and wellness, I mean the financial stability of the company and the ability for them to have work-life balance, and is there tuition reimbursement, etc. And I'm not fearful that the industry will go away by any means. I mean, I've lived and worked in Florida for 40 years, and it is our number one private employer in Florida. There are more jobs in hospitality and tourism coming every month as we move out of the pandemic. So for students, I think it's a desirable major, and we teach in the business school here at Florida Atlantic University. So we teach a curriculum that leads to a Bachelor of Business Administration with hospitality as the major. So they can go and work in any mainstream business. Mm-hmm. They can go work for, a videography company and be the guest service person. They can go work at a bank and open new accounts for guests. They can work in a healthcare office and be a patient advocate. They can do any kind of thing. Those skills of hospitality are always useful in life and never going away. So I don't think students should focus as much on the specific, intimate, current scenario as much as where we'll be in 2022, 2023, and how many opportunities are being thrown at them compared to someone who graduated in 2020.
There's so many brands out there now for hotels. There's extended stay, there's a luxury, there's a limited service, there's the full service, and it just goes on and on and on and on. Like, how does the schools keep up with the curriculum for all the demands that the industry is putting on you guys?
It's very interesting that you asked that because, in a good curriculum within a hospitality program, there's going to be some food and beverage, some hotel operations, some guest service, etc., because we have to touch every key area. And for us to be the expert on ever-changing things would also be unrealistic because we don't know where the students are going to wind up.
Yeah.
Some love select service, some absolutely hate it. Some are entrepreneurs. They want to either expand their own collection of Airbnb offerings or they want to open an inn. Others want to go to the large brands, the big franchisors like Marriott and Hilton, and they want to work an entire career with a major brand. So what we do is we teach the basics that would apply across anything in lodging. So we teach the STAR report, which they would use in any marketplace for the most part to know how they compete against their competitive set. We teach quantitative skills of ADR, occupancy, RevPAR, and reading a profit and loss statement. That's why I really like the business school model of hospitality, because today's leaders, whether they go into, I had a lady post jobs today, their company's called Nothing Bunt Cakes. And she needs a baker and she needs a manager in training. Well, guess what? She's looking at a business school for her manager in training because she owns 2 bakeries that have very successful bundt cake production for weddings. But not only do they need creative to know how to do the bundt cakes, they need how to read the financials.
Exactly.
So when I came up through the ranks, it was more about guest service, the human aspects, the interpersonal aspects, the leadership skills. Those are all still necessary, but if you don't have the quantitative skills, you're going to have a problem. So rather than we'll teach you what economy is usually means and budget, what mid-scale usually means, upscale, how Forbes and AAA decide their rating criteria, but we're not gonna teach specific software, and because people always ask me, well, what do you teach for point of sale system, the POS? And I'm like, well, we're not going to teach a specific software because the chance of you using that is probably 1 in 20.
Yeah.
So I'd rather teach you how to use basic software use skills of what a property management system in general does than teach you any one proprietary system. So that's kind of how we would deal with that. The same in food and beverage. We'll teach you menu design, but we're not going to teach you what a independent luxury restaurant does, specifically, and have, so it's broader. But I think the interpersonal skills, the leadership skills, the quantitative skills, especially reading a profit and loss statement and understanding how to impact it, is very important for even a junior supervisor who oversees 5 front desk agents. They need to know how they can impact labor, how they can impact productivity, how can they impact guest service scores in their small section of the hotel, and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit of everything. And then we mix it up because we are the most diverse institution in the state of Florida university system, and my faculty are fabulously diverse. So I have a guy who's very quantitative that's focused on digital marketing and consumerism through financial metrics. I have someone else who loves food and wine, and she's been to 40 countries and she brings in that flair. And then I have someone who's very young, and I have someone who's almost 80. And, we mix it up with cultures, races, gender, because that's the type of guest you're going to have. You're going to have guests from all over the world that speak multiple languages, and you need to see what clicks with you. As a student, you want to do what you love, so you need to find out what environment's going to work for you. If you're a full-service Hyatt type person, and I give you an independent 10-room boutique property to do your internship, you're going to hate it.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Sorry, that's a long way to answer your question on curriculum.
Oh, no, absolutely. Speaking of curriculum and training, when it comes to, when you're talking about training in different systems, it seems like a lot of hotels are taking this route where they're actually just teaching a front desk agent just how to use the system, and they're trained. Like, they don't really train guest engagement.
If they're lucky, they're teaching them that. Some properties we've gone so tight and efficient that sometimes it's here, welcome. Oh, can you grab the phone? And it's one of the things that leads to quick departure because they don't feel ownership or engagement.
Yeah.
But to me, there's the processes and standard operating procedures, the SOPs, the use of your systems and tools, and then there's separate training on guest engagement, guest service. There's separate training on conflict resolution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we need to do all of those things in any role, whether it's server, whether it's room attendant, whether it's night auditor. Night auditor's going to experience different things from a 7 a.m. clerk that's just arriving at the desk, or a sales manager is going to have a different type of day, but at some point, everybody needs guest interaction service skills, conflict resolution, quantitative skills, and using some type of system. Technology has been a very useful pathway to become more efficient, as long as it's not overused to purposefully reduce full-time equivalent labor. I agree with infusing technology as much as the guest wants and improving efficiency, but I don't agree with it just to eliminate human bodies. So it's a mixture. I've been to some casinos where you can order your drink on the keypad in front of you. I like it, I use it. Other guests next to me are looking for live human cocktail service. So you need to ask your guests what they like, what they're comfortable with, and then put as much technology as you can in those roles. But yeah, training, I mean, we buy these state-of-the-art softwares, and then in some cases we don't train enough, and one person in the building will know how to use it, and if that person's off, then we're all useless. I've seen it too many times in my path. So yeah, that is an issue.
Absolutely. Well, that's our time. Peter, how can everyone get in contact with you?
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you want them to.
Yeah, why not? I love it. I have a very easy email address. It's hospitality@fau.edu. FAU's for Florida Atlantic University. You can just Google FAU Hospitality, find my page. But it's hospitality@fau.edu. And this has been fun. I enjoyed spending time with you.
Absolutely. And thank you again for joining us for another episode of True Hotel Leaders, where leaders teach leaders. Talk to you soon.